we still playing? Because I think you owe me a dare.
It's been a while since I covered any of the teen romantic comedies that I stumbled into reviewing like a blind monkey falling into a septic tank, but I recently saw one that made me feel compelled to get my hands dirty again. A lot of you have asked me to look at this one, by which I mean a lot. And if you did, I understand why you did, but please never contact me again. Because out of all the derivative, trope-ridden, boring and problematic examples of this genre that I've seen, 2019's After has to be the worst. And I just realised that After isn't actually a comedy, which would explain why I didn't laugh. Or even enjoy myself. Not even once. I hate this movie. And while this one wasn't actually produced by Netflix, you could have fooled me. Just to give you some idea of what we're dealing with, not only did After originate as a self-insert OC on Wattpad, as did The Kissing Booth, but it's a self-insert OC on Wattpad that's a fanfiction about Harry Styles. And not just the normal Harry Styles, a bad boy Harry Styles. Do I really need to say more? I mean, come on. We all know where this is going. After suffers from many of the same problems as other movies I've looked at, including laughable writing, unlikable characters, questionable ideas about romance, overly long runtime and odd pacing, contrived conflict, and tropes oozing out of all of its putrid orifices, with every dodgy character has tattoos levels of subtlety. But the problems here are even worse than usual, so much so that I was actually surprised at how dumb it was, and I'm pretty much numb to this stuff by now. For starters, there's our supposedly relatable protagonist Tessa, an innocent good girl who falls for the bad boy Harry Styles substitute. And this story lazily interprets innocent to mean as fascinating as a low-fat soy latte, because she is completely uninteresting. In fact, no, she's worse than just boring. She acts in a way that's downright irresponsible and reprehensible, and not in any kind of complex or ambiguous way. Sierra Burgess, Elle from The Kissing Booth, and the tall girl from Tall Girl were all pretty stupid, but they were at least either bullied, manipulated, or abused, and their actions didn't happen in a vacuum, so you could at least have some sympathy for them. But this girl is just a complete f***ing idiot. And then there's Harry Styles. Sorry, Hardin Scott. See? It's original. He's played by Ralph Fiennes' nephew, although you wouldn't know that from his acting ability. This guy doesn't have resting bitch face, he has resting serial killer face. That, or he looks like he's about to poop his pants and cry. In line with their interpretation of other romantic archetypes, bad boy here means thoroughbred arsehole. He's immensely disrespectful and condescending and says things like,
"Love is just a transaction. We're all hardwired to desire. We can turn it on, and we can turn it off."
These two have no chemistry whatsoever, and their relationship is not so much an emotional roller coaster as it is an emotional train wreck. I haven't read the whole fanfic or the book series it was expanded into because I do have some self-respect, but here's a sample from Wattpad, and I'm just going to apologise in advance to my American audience for... You'll see. "I'm not pitying you, I'm just trying to..." Trying to what? He cuts me off again. "Help you, be here for you," I tell him, and he smiles. It is a beautifully haunting smile, and I know what is about to happen. "You are so pathetic. Don't you see that I don't want you here? I don't want you to be here for me. Just because I messed up around you doesn't mean I want anything to do with you. Yet here you are, leaving your boyfriend who can actually stand to be around you to come here and try to help me. That, Teresa, is the definition of pathetic," he says using air quotes. His voice is full of venom, just like I knew it would be. And then after he offers a half-hearted apology, 3 pages later she gives him a F me. It really is like the Diet Coke version of 50 Shades of Grey. While Hardin's not quite this bad in the... I'm sorry. Can we just acknowledge that they somehow made 50 Shades of Grey worse? How is that possible? I'm actually quite impressed. While Hardin's not quite this bad in the film, he's still a manipulative douche, and there are plenty of signs that this relationship could become actually abusive in the future. And the worst part is that the movie contextualizes it as being an acceptable part of a young, wild and free relationship, and something that goes hand in hand with Tessa breaking out of her shell and discovering herself as a person, when it's really not okay? But there's a lot about this movie that isn't okay, so let's get into it. In the opening that, to its credit, perfectly sets the tone for what follows, Tessa tells us that she now defines her existence based on her having the bad boy in her life.
My life before him was so simple and decided. And now after him, there's just... after.
He said it! He said it!
After this admission that she has no personality, we skip back to when, fresh-faced and sheltered, she heads off to college with her mother and high school boyfriend Noah in tow. She meets her roommate and future OnlyFans entrepreneur Steph, and they openly talk about getting her into all the best places, even without a fake ID, while her mum is right there? Don't do drugs, kids.
What's with all the old books? Who brings books to college?
People who don't want their parents' money to go to waste, you stupid bitch. So Mum immediately wants to get a room change, but Tessa convinces her to trust her. At her first lecture, she meets Landon, another eager freshman and the only friend she'll make before she turns all of her attention towards Christian beige. She goes back to her room after having a shower, only to find Hardin lying on her bed. Not only does he very quickly establish that he's a disrespectful toe rag, but he spoils the book she's reading, although he gets the ending wrong.
But it was all a dream.
Actually, it was all a lie.
What a heartthrob. Although according to dating expert and ultra Chad Richard LaRuiner, that can be a viable strategy.
Show me the cover. Ah, that one.
Have you read it?
He dies in the end.
Yeah, he does.
Sorry to spoil it.
I've actually read it before. Yeah.
Anyway, my name's Richard.
Brenna,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Ow!
This is a playful opener.
What?
Again, it can
No!
work if you
No!
deliver it correctly. Maybe she'll look confused.
No!
at the words,
Fuck
but you
off!
can still
Fuck-
carry
no,
it on.
fuck
So
off!
It's,
You
it's
spoil-
actually got a very
No!
high chance of success.
No! Steph convinces Tessa to go to a house party with her where she meets some of Steph's friends, who are also assholes. They peer pressure her into drinking, shame her for being a virgin, and then dare her to make out with Hardin, but she's having none of it. This is the high point of her good decisions. It's all downhill from here. She unknowingly wanders into Hardin's room where he confronts her. Turns out he also reads books and doesn't drink. This leads to a lot of sexual tension and they almost make out, but she runs off again. In their next lecture together, they have an argument about the relationship between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, and it's a completely unsubtle allegory to their own dynamic.
I think that it was the most revolutionary feminist novel that I'd ever read. That a woman of that era would have the strength to reject Darcy when he treated her poorly.
Yeah, all that talk about feminism gets thrown out the window in about 10 minutes. Shortly after, Hardin wants them to start over and be friends. She wants them to keep their distance, but immediately changes her mind as he promises to show her his special place, which is in the middle of the woods because he hasn't already given her enough red flags. He then convinces her to go swimming so he can creep on her again.
Who do you love the most in the world?
Easy. Myself.
He said that. He actually said that, with no irony. He also insults her boyfriend for still being in high school and calls him boring because he's nice and not a condescending jackass. This must have got her panties wetter than the lake because they share a moment and start making out. It quickly becomes apparent that he brought her there so that he could make a move on her, not because he wanted to be friends. Although why would we expect any different? Then they have this awkward moment which I suppose is meant to be tender and seductive, but it comes across as so f***ing creepy. He fills her up, which is apparently the first time anyone's ever done so. It's implied that she's been going out with Noah for a very long time, but they've never done anything physical? What kind of relationship is this? Why even make her have a boyfriend in the first place? For the sake of having some conflict and making this romance more taboo? That would be fine if it hadn't taken her so little time to forget about her boyfriend after this absolute stud muffin comes along. And instead of being like, no, we shouldn't be doing this, I have a boyfriend, her reaction is...
Why'd you stop?
A more accurate title would have been Cuck the Movie, if that didn't already exist. There's a whole nother hour of this to go, by the way, just throwing that out there. He starts to let the bad boy facade slip, but as soon as his friends appear, it goes right back up. She says she'll tell Noah about the two of them, but he insists that there is no them.
If you want to dump Mr. High School, then go ahead, but don't do it on my account. Look, it was fun, but I don't date.
So after all that, he doesn't date? To be fair, I haven't the least sympathy for her at this point, but he's right about one thing. She really should just dump her boyfriend if she's gonna behave like this. He deserves much better. The next day, he shows up to surprise her, but she doesn't tell him about Hardin because the wet dream she had about him the night before was too good, I guess? They go to another party where Hardin beats the shit out of one of his friends to defend her honor and assert dominance over her boyfriend. Yeah, they're really going there. This is only a couple of steps away from the absurd sex scenes in Ride to Hell Retribution. And you get a fucking achievement! No! No! Don't do this! Yeah, she looked like she was having a great time. Later that night, Landon texts her, so she sneaks out while her boyfriend is still sleeping and goes over to his house, to find that Hardin, in a drunken rage, smashed a bunch of stuff in his kitchen because he's unhappy that his dad is getting married to Landon's mum, which is also a thing, but yeah. He apologises and suddenly now he does want to date. Then they make out again and spend the night together. This is the part in the Wattpad story where he calls her pathetic and she goes down to Tugtown, which should give you an idea of how much this narrative has been toned down. Noah confronts her when she gets back. She tries to bullshit him, but when Hardin shows up, he immediately puts two and two together, does the right thing, and walks away. Which is exactly what she deserves. And then she gets the sads for a while.
Noah's my best friend, but you... You're so much more.
Why? Why is Hardin so much more? Because he touches you? Takes advantage of you even though he knows you have a boyfriend? Did you ever try to get Noah to touch you? Because I bet he wanted to, but he was being too nice, so neither of you brought it up. Jesus Christ, lady. What do they even have in common? They both read? Or is she just drawn to him because he's a bad boy and she's sheltered and bored and wants more out of life? And why does he even like her? Because she's pretty? Because she likes books too? What basis is this for a connection? Oh, and that's the conflict about the boyfriend over, by the way. He doesn't appear again until the very end. If you're gonna use this plot device, don't f***ing waste it like this. Anyway, she quickly settles into a romance with Hardin, who encourages her to break rules and ditch classes. While she's making out with him, her mum walks into her dorm room, which is unlocked, gets pissed, and storms out. She wants her to break up with him and focus on her schoolwork, while Tessa complains about how hard it's been to be perfect for her and how it's my life and you have to let me live it. This is despite the mum not having done anything worse than not wanting her daughter to become a crack whore. And Tessa decides to side with Hardin over her mum, who has looked after her entire life, much of it as a single parent, and helped her get to college in the first place. So the mum decides to cut her off. They're making the boyfriend and mother out to be overprotective and smothering, and I get the resentment and desire for freedom that can result from that, and normally I'd be inclined to agree with her, but considering how much of a f***up she's being and how much she's ruining her education, I just can't, and it undermines the self-actualization angle they're going for. Coming of age, breaking out of the shell stories don't really work when the character is this dumb. Landon warns her about Hardin, but she's like, he's different around me. This movie is just an Avril Lavigne song, isn't it? Hardin convinces her to live together with him in an apartment owned by a friend of his dad who's abroad for the whole year. He's only meant to be watering the plants, so we can now add squatting to his rap sheet. So their romance continues.
I don't deserve you.
Nothing could ever change the way that I feel about you.
Oh no, I sure hope something doesn't happen that changes the way she feels about him. But sure enough, after a few scenes I'm going to skip over because f*** it, Tessa gets nosy and reads some of the text notifications on Hardin's phone which are from another girl. He's obviously hiding something but refuses to talk about it. This is only red flag number 152, so she mopes around for a while, before Hardin's friend tells her that he's hanging out with his friends at a bar, so she goes to confront him. And in a plot twist so predictable you could see it from f***ing space, it turns out that Hardin dared himself to make her fall in love with him, then he would just turn it off like he said it was possible to do. And all of the friends knew about it the entire time and went along with it. Yeah, major dick move, but honestly, it's hard to care about her after the way she treated her boyfriend and acted like a dumbass throughout the proceedings. And then they all get the big sads, including the weather, of course. She goes home and makes up with her mum and with her ex-boyfriend, who talks about how messing up as badly as she did is how you discover who you are. Which she kinda does, changing her major to pursue her passion for literature and landing an internship at a publishing company, while Hardin wallows in his regret. But we have to have our resolution, so in trope number 841, her lecturer gives Tessa the essay Hardin handed in.
I think it was actually written more for you than it was for me.
He compares them to Darcy and Elizabeth from Pride and Prejudice, because of course he does. This is just like that f***ing song in Sierra Burgess or the application in The Perfect Date. Just talk to her. She goes back to their special place, he arrives, and the implication is that they get back together. So after all that, she still goes back to him? After he lied to her for all that time, plus everything else he did, how can she trust him again? But no, he writes a heartfelt essay and it's all good, for f***'s sake, girl. Everything she went through and all of their terrible behaviour is validated as a learning experience. F*** this movie. While not being as bad as its original version on Wattpad, to say that this story has issues with some of its ideas about romance is an understatement. I get that this is meant to be escapist fantasy and all that jazz, but I still worry that some impressionable people are going to see this and think that this kind of dynamic is okay. That they should put up with all this bullshit because the dreamy bad boy with the English accent will be tamed if the right girl comes along and stays the course. Which, I'm sorry to say, is very rarely how it works. Based on that and the movie's lack of redeeming value in other areas such as charm, talent, or even unintentional hilarity, I feel comfortable saying that After is the worst teen romance movie that I've seen so far. Why do I say so far? Because they're making a sequel. Fuck. Weird bit of trivia, one of this film's producers was Courtney Solomon. You know, the director of the 2000 Dungeons & Dragons movie I covered? What a weird coincidence. I'm not saying there's a connection, but come on buddy, you're not helping yourself. Thanks for watching folks, special shout out to all of my lovely supporters over on Patreon. Your support goes a long way in helping these videos get made. If you like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel more directly, consider becoming a patron yourself. I stream semi-regularly over on Twitch, so follow me at twitch.tv/cynicalreviewsofficial if you're interested in hanging out. Join my public Discord server and follow me on social media to stay up to date, and I'll see you in the next one.